Page 128, problem number 43. Find the factors of f, list all real zeros of f, and graph the function. And we're given a function, f of x equals 2x cubed plus x squared minus 5x plus 2. Well, let's tackle this one thing at a time. First, find all the factors of this function. So that means we need to break this down as x minus something, x plus something, etc., etc. In order to do that, the first thing we have to do is find a zero. And I'm just going to list all the possible zeros. The possible zeros we can write are x equals, and remember the possible zeros could be the factors of this term divided by the factors of this coefficient. So it could be plus or minus, it could be 1 or 2, the factors of that last term, divided by the factors of this first coefficient, 1 or 2. So my possible zeros are 1, 2, 1/2, or -1, -2, or -1/2. So the first thing we have to do is find one of these numbers that works when I plug it in for x. By working, I mean it equals 0. So if I were to plug 1 in place of x, let's say, 1 cubed is 1, so I have 2 times 1, plus 1 squared is 1, so 2 plus 1 is 3. Minus 5 times 1 is -2, plus 2 is 0. So plugging 1 in there works. It makes this equal 0. So 1 is a 0. So right away down here, I'm just going to write my zeros. I'm going to say x equals, one of my answers is the number 1. Now I expect 3 zeros because we have x cubed. We won't always get 3 distinct zeros, but we know one of those zeros is the number 1. Now we also know when we factor this, we're going to get x minus 1 as a factor. So I'll write that right away. It's going to be x minus 1 times something. Now the tricky part is knowing what the something is. Well, to find it, what we have to do is divide this expression by x minus 1. We can use long division, or let's use synthetic division. So I'll put 1 outside here, and 2, 1, -5, and 2. These are the coefficients of the original function. And remember, synthetic division, we add down, multiply diagonally. So if I add down, I get 2. When I multiply diagonally, I always multiply by this number out here. So 2 times 1 is 2. Add down, multiply diagonally. Add down, multiply diagonally, add down. Now this 0 is a very good sign because we should get a remainder of 0 because remember 1 worked here. It gave us an answer of 0. So now, this tells me that when I divide out x minus 1, I get, these are now the coefficients of my new expression, 2x squared plus 3x minus 2. Okay, now I still need to break down this part right here. I can break it down a few ways. I could use synthetic division again, find a number that works by plugging it in here. Or I could try to factor this, or I could use the quadratic formula. Now I think I probably can factor this, but let's use the same method we used before. From this point, possible zeros are x equals plus or minus, and again it's the factors of this number over the factors of this, so it's still going to be possible zeros would be 1, 1/2, or 2, -1, -1/2, or -2. Let's just try some of these. Let's plug a 1 in here. 1 squared is 1, times 2 is 2, plus 3 times 1 is 3, so 2 plus 3 is 5, minus 2. 1 doesn't work. Let's try -1. -1 squared is 1, times 2 is 2, 3 times -1 is -3, so I have 2 plus -3 is -1 minus 2. -1 doesn't work. Let's try 2 in here. 2 squared is 4, times 2 is 8, plus 3 times 2 is 6. That's not going to work. Let's try -2. -2 squared is 4, times 2 is 8, plus 3 times -2 is -6 minus 2, so I have 8 minus 6 minus 2. -2 works. So that tells me that this is going to be, don't forget the x minus 1, times, hey, -2 works. That means x plus 2 is a factor, times something. Down here, I'm also going to put -2 in for one of my zeros. So now I need to find this other factor. Now I could let's see here, try to figure out what it would be by factoring this, or I can use synthetic division again. I'm going to put negative 2 outside here. I'm going to put my coefficients 2, 3, negative 2, and let's use our synthetic division once again. Adding down, multiplying diagonally, adding down, multiplying diagonally gives me a remainder of 0. That's a good thing, and that tells me that my missing factor is 2x minus 1. So now, find the factors of this function. There it is. There's that first part of the answer. List the real zeros of the function. Well, I still need a 0 from this factor. The 0 is the number I can plug in here to make this equal 0. Now, I could set this equal to 0 and solve for x, or I could just think, what can I plug in here to make it equal to 0? Either way I do it, I get an answer of 1/2. Now, last part, graph the function. So what these zeros tell me is that's where this function goes through the x-axis. It goes through at 1, at negative 2, and at 1/2. Now I know a few other things about this graph. First of all, this number here is my y-intercept. So I've got a point right here. I also know since it's cubed, and it's a positive number in front of my cube, it starts down here at the bottom, curls up, down, and then ends up here at the top. So I'm going to attempt to get a rough sketch of this. I don't know exactly where this goes. Whoops. Let's see here, but it's going to come up, do something kind of like this, go through these points, and go on forever this way and this way. Now just to verify this, let's pull out our graphing calculator. Let's just graph this function and see if it really does look like this. So I'm going to press my y equals key. We'll type in 2x to the third power plus x squared minus 5x plus 2. Okay, and when I press graph, I should see, looks like a graph of this function. Not exactly, this is an estimate of it, but my zeros are good, my y-intercept is good, so it's a graph of that function.